Welcome back to the She Thrives Influential Women podcast. I am your host, Lori Murphy, and I am an empowerment coach for women. For many of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. It is so great to have you here. I know that many of you have been coming along the journey, finding the podcast on all different types of platforms. And some of you have been invited, especially by Casey DeMars, who just recently interviewed here on this podcast, and she's phenomenal. But real quick, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am. Again, I am an empowerment coach for women. I'm certified in holistic health and wellness, as well as a transformation life coach. And my passion is to guide women along in their journeys of overcoming fear, building self-confidence on a path of self-love and gaining self-worth and all the things, and being able to thrive in their journeys. That is my passion. That is my mission. And it really just sets my soul on fire to be able to be a guide. My own personal journey has led me here, recovering alcoholic of almost 13 years. Weight loss, at one point was almost 300 pounds and all these unhealthy lifestyles. And I lived in darkness for a long, long time. And it led me to this calling to be of service, to help other women. And that is why I am here. And that's why I am grateful to have you here, because if you're listening to this, it's because there's something impactful that you need to hear to help you along your journey. So let's dive into what I'd like to talk about today. And I want to talk about something that, I have to say is weighing heavy on my heart. As I'm sure many of you are aware of, a lot of the lives that have been lost in the celebrity world as of the past few days. Richard Simmons, Dr. Ruth, and Shannen Doherty, or just to name three. And I really want to talk a little bit about Shannen Doherty, because Shannen Doherty, not only am I a fan geek over Beverly Hills 90210. I mean, I have binge watched it, a few times as an adult, watched it as a young child. Brenda Walsh, everyone wanted to be her. She was iconic. And even more so, Shannen Doherty is iconic. And when I learned the other day that she had lost her battle to cancer and she is passed away, I was sweeping the floor in my living room at camp, and I just dropped my broom. I was like, what? Almost like that reaction you get when it's somebody that you know and you're close to, and your mouth just drops. You're like, what? I have been following her podcast and her journey on Instagram for the last few years. And I even was talking at Christmas to somebody about celebrities I'd love to meet, and she was like number one on my list. And I still can't believe that she's gone. But what I've been really thinking about is how tremendously inspiring she is and has been, not just with her battle with cancer, not just with her animal advocacy and what she has done for rescue animals, but for her voice, her strength, her ability to be able to share her truth, to be able to stand up for herself, to be able to stay true to what her beliefs are, regardless of how other people might have felt. And I'm sure if any of you have been following her or her podcast, or even have heard little clips about her podcast, let's be clear. In that podcast was, she brought on, castmates from the past, from Beverly Hills 90210, castmates from Charmed, and she really dove into a lot of things and cleared the air about a lot of rumors that have been milling over decades about how she's difficult and how she is hard to work with. I mean, she lost her, because she lost her job with Beverly Hills 90210. She was fired from Charmed. Both shows were Aaron Spelling's shows, but she really has come out and talked about really what was going on, especially during 90210 and what she was experiencing. She was in an abusive marriage, and she would be showing up to set hours late, and her makeup artist would be working hard to try to cover up her bruises so that you couldn't see them. And nobody understood, nobody knew on the set what was going on. But because she was constantly late, they saw her as problematic. And there was obviously other issues. Her and Jenny Garth had had a fight, and it just a lot of drama, right? And so that led to everybody just kind of coming together and agreeing that it was time for her to go. And she lost her job on the show. And, later it has come out about how she survived marriage to somebody who was actively using drugs and physically harming her. Um, and she survived all that. She survived all that. And I can understand being tardy and some of the other things, but it's like she owned it, right? Like she owned her part. Like she did not, by any sense of the word, try to say, well, this happened to me and blah blah blah. She owned it. She owned her part. She owned her wrongs, but she also cleared up a lot of the rumors about how she is hard to work with and how she was a bitch and everything like that, all because she stayed true to her values. She stayed true to her what she believed in, and she used her voice. She was not afraid to speak up. And back in the 90s, women did not speak up, not like they do today. And in Hollywood, there's still that speculation, and that, if you speak up, like look at Katherine Heigl. She also just recently, last month, I believe, was on Shannen Doherty's podcast. Katherine Heigl lost her job, or she left Grey's Anatomy, and she was, rumored to be problematic and a bitch because she stuck up for what she believed in. She stuck up for herself. She used her voice. And here's Shannen Doherty, who's been doing it since the 90s, and it really upset me to know how she had very little support and how she was done dirty a lot of the times. Um, like I said, the one thing I respect the most about her is that if she was wrong, she said she was wrong. And she has claimed the fact that, I could have handled this differently, right? She was not, by any sense of the word, playing victim, but she kept her mouth shut about a lot of her truths. And the media attacked her and beat her down, and paparazzi, and she was very misunderstood, very misunderstood. In reality, she was a very kind-hearted, generous person, a very good friend to the people that she was friends with, very loving daughter, sister, and she took care of the people she loved more than anything in the world. And she was genuinely a good person who got a bad rep because she spoke up. She used her voice. And when I started listening to her podcast and I started to hear her story and I started to hear how she was using her voice and using her platform to finally get her truth out, and the courage to be able to share a lot of the things that happened in her life, share her cancer journey, she even had past spouses, former spouses on her podcast, and just really got very honest and very raw. And I admired that. And I was inspired by it. And when I think about being a woman is who has found her voice, and the more empowered I am to use my voice, to share my story, to be able to set boundaries and tell people when things are not acceptable to me, to be able to utilize the voice that God gave me and to be able to stand up for my values and for what I believe in. That was something that I was scared to do for years. Scared to do because I was always afraid of who would get upset. Who would I offend? I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to have a fight with somebody. And then to have somebody like Shannen Doherty come along who represented everything I wanted to be, everything that I want to be, and show me the way of how to be that way. Yeah. I know I'm not alone in that. I know that there are so many women out there who look up to her, and that's the legacy that she leaves behind. Her strength, her courage, her ability to use her voice, her kindness, her generosity, the people whose lives she touched by how amazing it is. I don't hate to say was, but she is. She's amazing. And somebody that I particularly have to say I look up to. So I think that that is something that we all should look at, ladies. And if you're feeling afraid to use your voice, if you're feeling afraid of who are you going to offend, who are you going to hurt, or is this going to start a fight? Think about Shannen Doherty and how she found the courage to be able to overcome a lot of that. We should not be silenced. We should not be knocked down. We should not have to feel like we have to sit quiet to appease other people, or God forbid, being called a bitch and being labeled difficult just because you spoke your mind and said that this is no longer acceptable to me. Are you feeling afraid? Are you feeling that you may get in trouble if you speak up? Are you afraid of having that label of being difficult or a bitch? When I think about that, I think to myself, well, sometimes you just got to be the bitch. Sometimes you got to be the bad guy in somebody's story, right? Because not everybody is going to accept your boundaries. Not everybody is going to like that you're setting boundaries. Not everybody is going to be on board with it. And most definitely, there are going to be a lot of people out there that are going to fight against you. And you may very well get called a bitch and you may very well get called difficult, but you want to know something? At the end of the day, you can go to bed knowing that you stood your ground, that you did not allow somebody to disrespect you, to knock you down, to beat you down, to hurt you, to cross a boundary. To be able to use your voice to say, that is not okay. to say no. That doesn't make you a bitch. That doesn't make you difficult. That makes you a human being. And you have every right in the world to use your voice and to tell people when things are not okay. You are perfectly capable, and it is perfectly okay to set boundaries. We need to set healthy boundaries. We need to be able to protect ourselves, especially in today's world with a lot of bullying and naysaying. And we got to be able to set those healthy boundaries. And I think so. I recently just wrote an ebook, and it's about to be released. Actually, I believe I'll be putting it up tonight so I can share with you about it. It is called Becoming Whole: The Path to Self-Love. And in one of those chapters, in chapter 2, I talk about setting healthy boundaries. And I share a little bit about how boundaries used to terrify me because I thought that they were bad. I thought that, like I had mentioned before, that fear of hurting people's feelings or who's going to get mad at me and whatever else, there was a lot of fear set around boundaries because I never knew what boundaries were. I didn't start hearing about boundaries until I got sober at 29 years old. I didn't know what boundaries were. I didn't know what that was a thing. So when somebody said to me, you need to set better boundaries, I went, what is that? What is that? And when it was explained to me, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Oh, I don't know if I can. Right? Like, oh, that might stir a pot. That might ruffle some feathers. Oh, if I do that, they're going to get mad at me. And that scared the shit out of me. I'm going to be very real with you. I thought that boundaries were bad. I just identified them as something that was going to cause me harm, not protect me. And that is not the case. Boundaries is an act of love for ourselves. Setting healthy boundaries is completely needed in the sake of protecting our heart, protecting our well-being. Saying, I love myself enough to no longer accept this. It is not okay to talk to me that way. It is not okay to call me a bitch. It is not okay for you to put your hands on me like that. And it is okay to walk away from those that do not respect those boundaries. A lot of people don't like boundaries. There are a lot of people out there, especially if you've never set boundaries with them before and you start setting boundaries, that will ruffle feathers. Because now you're taking away their control. But you get a sense of confidence, strength, a sense of peace, and peace and a sense of well-being because you stood up for yourself and you said that I'm no longer taking this behavior. And that is something that Shannen Doherty, I think, had, if out of all of the things that she really stood for, that was one thing that I think that she really represented, was a woman who loved herself enough to set that boundaries and said, this is not acceptable to me. And she stuck to that. And that's the thing, is that sticking to the boundaries. You know, that woman, she definitely got the short end of the stick a lot of times. And I think that she should have been treated differently. I really truly do. But you know what? Her experiences made her the badass strong woman that she is today. If you have been reading any of the things that people have been saying of, former castmates and friends, is just how strong she was. And they talk about how she, like Tori Spelling, especially in the podcast episode where Tori was a guest on Shannen's podcast. I think it was last month. they talked about their friendship and how Tori did not have a voice. She was basically she was easily persuaded. She was easily convinced to do things, even if it didn't feel right to her. She kind of just went with what she felt she had to do. And Tori was a very strong advocate for her, right? Telling her that, F them, you don't need to tolerate, you don't need to take this. Like, no. She stood up for her. She protected her because Shannen was a little bit older than Tori. But even Tori has even shared about that strength, that fire, and how she had that strength and that will and that fire in her when back in the 90s that most women did not have. I've never worked in Hollywood, obviously. I don't really know much about that world other than what you hear and what you read and what you see. But the things that I have learned is that, and this happens across the board anywhere you go. If you're a woman, you're just expected to do. And, it's not always taken well when you use your voice and set boundaries, right? That doesn't mean you stop setting boundaries. That just means you keep setting boundaries. And the people that respect your boundaries are the people that are supposed to be in your life. Those are the people that you want around. Those are the people that love you as much as you love yourself. It's time we women really stand up for ourselves. It's time we really set healthy boundaries to protect ourselves. It's it's time to stand our ground. It is time for us to be stronger, to say what's okay and what isn't. If something makes you uncomfortable, say it. It's time we stop being afraid of being labeled as something, because we're doing what men have been doing for centuries. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm bashing men because I'm really not, but there is truth to what I'm saying. It's almost like if a man is in an office position and he's getting taken for a ride by his boss, he can stand his ground and say, no, I'm not going to tolerate this, you know, whatever. He gets a handshake and, good man, the good job, blah, blah, blah. A woman does it and she's immediately labeled as a bitch and she's fired, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of these experiences. I have, and I think that's crap. If you find out that you've been working for a company for 10 years and somebody underneath you, in particular a male who has less work experience, only been there 5 years and doesn't even have the degrees you have, and they're making $20,000 more a year than you are, that's a fucking problem. Excuse my language, but it's true. And you should be able to say something about that. You should be able to say that that's not okay. You should be able to demand what you're worth, because you are worth it. You are valuable. You deserve it. You worked hard for it. And if you're not going to get that respect, then you just look for something else, because it's just a job. Don't settle for less than what you deserve because you're afraid of being labeled. Throw the labels out the window, because at the end of the day, they don't really matter. What matters is how much you love and respect yourself and how much you stick up for what you know is right and what you feel in your core to be right. I think it took, Shannen Doherty, she really is the voice of that. She represents that. And I am going to miss hearing her podcast. I'm going to miss seeing her pop up in my Instagram page. I'm going to miss hearing her stories. And it breaks my heart. 53 years young, but she didn't waste her time. She didn't waste her life. And she took care of herself. I remember a couple years ago when I think she was in treatment for her breast cancer. And she used to post a lot of videos on Instagram of her doing her, you know, aerobic exercises, and she'd be dancing and all the things. And she did not let cancer take her out. Like, she was still up doing the thing. And I loved seeing that. I was inspired by that. Here's this woman going through cancer treatments, and she's still getting up and taking care of herself. She's still exercising and making sure that she's keeping her body strong so that she could keep fighting, because that's what fighters do. They don't succumb to an illness, say, well, I guess that's it, and throw in the towel. She didn't even do that when she got the stage 4 diagnosis. She accepted her reality, but she didn't lose hope. And she never stopped fighting for a different outcome. That's the kind of woman I want to be. And I think that that's the kind of woman we should all aspire to be. So when we're thinking about Shannen Doherty and we're thinking about the legacy she has left behind, we should celebrate her. We should celebrate everything she represented. And my heart is broken for her family, and I am sending so much love and prayers to her family and her friends and those that have really lost a very valuable and incredible person. I feel like we all have, especially those of us who grew up watching her as Brenda Walsh on 90210, or her playing her role on Charmed. I never got into Charmed, I'm not gonna lie, and I know I don't even want to try to say the name of her character because I know I'll screw it up. That's how very little about that show that I know, but you get it. I'm just being real. I have terrible memory when it comes to like names and phone numbers and stuff like that. Like, I am the worst. The worst. So that's why I'm not even gonna go there. But use your voice. Use your voice. Set those healthy boundaries. Don't take shit from anyone. And if anybody tries to tell you that you're difficult, throw it out the window, because you know that you are doing what's right for you. You are protecting yourself because you love yourself enough. I want you to say that right now, out loud. Go stand in front of the mirror, or I don't care if you're driving in your car. I don't care if you're in the middle of the grocery store listening to this in your earbuds. I want you to say, I love myself. Say it with me. I love myself. And give yourself a big hug while you're doing it, because this is telling your subconscious that you really, truly do. This hugs feel good. They make you feel loved. They make you feel safe. Hug yourself. I love myself. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Please leave a review on wherever you're listening to this podcast, because it keeps boosting the podcast up in the search so that other people can find it. So please leave a review. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't ever miss another episode. And if there's any way that I can be a guide in your journey, I'd love to be able to have a conversation. So I am going to leave a link in the chat. I'm sorry, in the description for you to click on. Schedule a call with me, a 30-minute complimentary gifted call just to chat. And let's see if there's some way I can be of help to you in your journey of self-love, self-discovery, overcoming fear, building your confidence, and getting to a place where you can set healthy boundaries and take care of yourself and use your damn voice. It's time for us to be brave. It's time for us to show up. It's time to level up. And if I can help you in any way, I'd love to be able to chat with you. So please click the link when it's in the description and set up a call with me. And be on the lookout because like I said, I am releasing my ebook tonight. And that is called, see what I mean? This is like total ADHD brain right now. I'll show it to you. Ready? A sneak peek? A sneak peek? I'll show it to you. I don't know if you can see it. Becoming Whole, the path to self-love. I'm really excited about this. This will be available for purchase, which when that is available, I will be sharing the link. Keep an eye out for that in the description. Becoming Whole, the path to self-love. I'm really excited about it. Get yourself a copy. You can download it, print it out so you have a paper copy, whatever you'd like, but I'm really excited about it. So keep your eye out for that. Subscribe, leave a review, and book a call with me. And I will leave you with this. Let go of fear and let your spirit shine. Until next time, have a good day.